What's going on YouTube, OCD for EDC? What I got for your face balls today, we're going to be taking a look at one of the best new budget knives on the market, and it happens to be this little guy right here. This is the Kaiser Slicer. Definitely a really cool knife, a fairly decent sized one, and that's one of the things that I really enjoy about it. But first up, I'm going to throw out a few size comparisons here. Here it is up against the Manly Peak, another backlock. Here we got another backlock, the Native Chief. Here it is against the Spyderco Para 3. And just for good measure, just because it's sitting here, we'll take a look at the old switch buoy there. So you can see we're not a small knife by any means, but definitely a really cool budget knife. And interestingly, this is Kaiser's very first backlock, which I thought was kind of interesting. I hadn't really thought about it before, but this is absolutely the first backlock offered from Kaiser Cutlery. And we're going to talk a little bit about that here later on. So what we're looking at, overall length, we got essentially it's an 8.5-inch knife, just over, measures 8.504 inches. We've got handle length of 4.712. We have a blade length. Overall blade length here is 3.792. And we have just a little over 3.5-inch cutting edge. We have a handle thickness of 0.497, so pretty thin for its length. And a blade stock thickness of an eighth of an inch or 125 thousandths. And a very, very nice full flat grind. It comes down to 15 thousandths behind the edge. So it's living up to its name, the Slicer. Now, weight on this guy, let's get a scale out here. Not super lightweight, but not overly heavy either. Looking at basically 4.9 ounces, just under 5 ounces, which feels good in the hand. You know, it's doesn't feel flimsy or cheap at all, but definitely does have a little bit of weight to it. So materials on this guy, we've got G10 scales, got a nice fold-over style deep carry pocket clip. Blade steel is Bowler N690. You can see it right there. And this is a design from Mikhail Golovich. I'm not really sure how to pronounce his name, but this happens to be one of the best ergonomic knives that I have gotten my hands on, certainly so far this year. In my opinion, this is about the best budget knife that I have handled this year. It's got a crowned spine, really nice black thumb stud, and overall, I think it's a really good looking knife. Now, I know there's some people that probably aren't going to be super excited about the backlock. You know, most of the time, backlock knives, not quite as fidgetable and that sort of thing as, you know, other stuff that has a really nice smooth action. But backlocks are, you know, definitely a proven design, been around for a very, very long time. And this one, although we're going to talk about this backlock, the lockup on it is super solid, really well made, and definitely performs well. And I put it in the same category as the Manly Peak. Now, if you guys know, it's been a long time since I've shown a Manly Peak on my channel, but I did a video on this knife a long time ago. Actually did a knife strife between the Native Chief and the Manly Peak. But the Manly Peak is one of my favorite knives. It's just a phenomenal worker knife, and you know, it's not fancy, it's not real sexy or anything like that. And I really like the Manly Peak still to this day. It's got a really great pocket clip, deep carry. I love the opening hole in the blade. Just everything about the Peak is fantastic, except for you can't get them anymore. So Manly, for whatever reason, I don't know all the backstory, but the U.S. distribution has gone by the wayside, and so you still can find some Manleys around at different dealers here and there, but not in the models that are my favorite. So they do have what they call, I'm pretty sure they call it the Peak 2. It does not have the hole in the blade. Still, you know, a decent knife with good steel and definitely good blade geometry. But the original Peak, this one right here, is the one that I like. So anyway, the Kaiser Slicer is a really, really fantastic backlock, just like the Manly Peak, but with better ergos. So we do have contoured G10 here. Not a tremendous amount of contouring, but just enough to make it really, really comfortable. We'd have a little bit of a thumb ramp here with some jimping across the backlock and carrying out onto the blade. We've got a really pronounced choil there for your finger to fall into. And man, this thing just works so well in hand. It really is just, it's fantastic. In my hands, it really doesn't get much better than this for fit and just being locked into a knife. I mean, this thing is just really, really solid. So really pumped on that. Bowler N690. You know, we're starting to see a lot more Bowler N690. It's a steel that several custom makers like to work with because it's relatively easy to work with. It polishes extremely well. It also takes a very, very fine edge. And a lot of people say that it's very similar to VG10, and it is. It's close. However, it does have a little bit higher carbon content. It has certainly quite a bit more chromium as far as steels go. I think VG10's like right around 15%, where Bowler N690 is a little over 17%. So we've got more corrosion resistance with Bowler N690, as well as we also have a little higher cobalt and moly. And all of this leads up to having better fine edge retention, and it's just going to take a really keen edge. So it's certainly going to outperform most VG10, and so it's definitely a really good quality steel. Now for this knife, what you're getting: G10, Bowler N690, backlock, deep carry clip. Now the clip, technically, the screws will line up, and I'm going to disassemble this here in just a minute. So we'll take a look at what we're working with inside. But there is no milled out pocket. So if you can see there's a little milled out pocket on the backside for the clip to sit into. That is not carried over on the show side of the knife. So, although the clip would fit on the other side, you would have to do a little work here to make a little recessed spot for the clip to sit into. Wouldn't be the end of any worlds. It certainly would be doable, but it is what it is. Now, on the action on this thing, this is Kaiser's first attempt at a backlock, and it kind of shows. It functions beautifully as far as, locking up the knife. It's certainly very, very solid. No issues with that at all. I have no doubts that this will be a very, good lock and strong and all those things, and perform quite well. Where their kind of inexperience shows is in the functioning on it. So it almost feels like there's kind of a two-stage spring. So you can push the lock down to right there, and then you kind of noticeably hit this wall. And you have to push a little further past that, and then you can start to close the blade. Now, you can kind of see it on the blade tang here. There's a kind of a squared off area where you have kind of a half stop, but it's kind of spongy feeling. It's not a real true hard half stop. So, I feel like the blade tang geometry will be something that Kaiser will get better with time. But, Spyderco and their native series, the backlocks have gotten really, really good. They open very, very nice and smooth for a backlock. The mid backlock position, spring tension is not difficult to overcome, and they just perform very, very well. Also, with the Manly Peak, with the backlock, they have perfected this as well. Spring tension a little bit harder than the native, but also, really nice geometry on the spine. Or on the tang of the blade. Manleys do a great job with the tang getting a little larger, so it creates friction at this point right here. So when you push it, the blade drops, and then you can move it and go ahead and close the blade the rest of the way. So you can see that again, stops right there. And, you know, that kind of stuff is intentional for sure. Like I said, Kaiser hasn't really figured that out yet, but I'm giving them a pass on it to a certain extent because it's their very first backlock attempt, and they did a lot of things that are really, really great here. I love the crown spine. I love that they actually did a really nice job with the primary grind on this blade. The G10 is really nicely done. Now, this particular model right here, you can find at a bunch of retailers. It's a brand new model, just came out. I'm having trouble hearing you. Sorry about that. My watch was wanting to talk to me. Anyway, this model just came out, and you can find it at a bunch of retailers. It's right around $75, depending on where you buy it from. There is a higher grade version of this coming out that is carbon fiber scales with S35VN. And I don't know what the price on that one's going to be at this time, but in my opinion, you know, unless that thing is coming in at really rock star value, this one here I think is fantastic. For $75, the materials that you're getting, I think it's a great budget knife, a great worker knife. It's going to be, you know, relatively slim in the pocket. The clip is beautifully, it performs beautifully. In and out of the pocket's great. It's comfortable in hand, no noticeable hot spots. Really, really great knife. So let's take a look at this thing. We'll open her up. So we got a T8 on the pivot. It's only tooled on one side. Oh, actually, I got a T6 in my hand here. So we're going to go ahead and pull the clip off. And I'll show you that recessed area. I haven't disassembled this yet, so we're going to learn about it together, but you can see that recessed area where the pocket clip sits. And, you know, although the screws, like I said, are going to line up, the pocket clip's not going to set in there flush. Now, this clip, not only does the clip set flush with the G10, the screws sit flush in the clip. You can see the countersunk hole there and the taper head screw. So that's really nicely done. Get a T8 out here. Now, just looking down in there, this knife certainly is riding on phosphor bronze washers, and it looks like it's riding on multiple phosphor bronze, so I'm not sure exactly how many washers we're going to see in here, but let's find out. So that's it for hardware, at least at this point. Go ahead. Okay, so we do have one more screw underneath the scale. Get this oil off of here. All right, so you can see the D-shaped pivot here. Yeah, nice. All looks good. So we do have this one screw for the pivot point on the back lock. All right. I'm going to put the blade in this half position here. A little tighter than I was expecting. There we go. All right. Definitely have some spring tension here. Okay. So we've got polished liners that look, yeah, definitely have a little bit of stone washing to them. So that's nice. So good attention to detail. So here's where we can see the blade tang and the shape of it. So right here is where we get this kind of half stop action. And then you can see here, okay, so we have a blade stop pin right there. And then also back here on the blade tang, it's stopping out or hitting and bottoming out on that portion of the lock bar. And then when we go all the way around, just standard kind of back lock geometry going on there. So you can see that we have this really pronounced squared off blade tang. So that's vastly different from, you can see on the Manly Peak here, it's very, very rounded, but it's like a increasing circle, like a parabolic circle, similar to the Spyderco back locks also have the same thing. It exponentially gets larger as you go around the radius. So just, different ways to do it. This is more akin to a slip joint knife. Now, one of the main differences I see right off the bat, most back locks have the actual spring tension is a bar that's, like spring steel. We'll see here if I can pop this off and show you a different one. Now the Manly Peak, these are actually, I'm pretty sure these screws are actually Allen, but they work. A T8 and T6 fits in there very tightly, so we're just going to roll with it because that's what I got sitting here. Now, definitely the Peak is not nearly as well finished. So you can see here on the liners on the Peak, they are not, polished and then stone washed. They're just machine ground. And so there are some fit and finish issues, or not issues, but just details like that. What you're paying for with the Manly is the superior heat treat and blade grind. But the Kaiser is well done, and Kaiser has done some really great stuff. I don't have any concerns at all. But you can see here the difference in the spring and the way that the back lock operates. So right here, you can see this added leaf spring on the Manly, and that's going to be very, very similar to all of Spyderco's back locks as well. Like the Delica, all that have got a leaf spring style bar in there just like that. And on the Kaiser, they have implemented the spring, sorry all that stuff's so shiny, but they have implemented the spring into this backspacer piece, and you can see they even went the extra mile to make it a little bit narrower since that moves in that gap, which is nice. So you shouldn't have, you should have a little reduced friction, but let's go ahead and remove the blade. I'm curious to see how many washers we have here. Okay, so we have one, and then we have a Teflon washer, and then a second bronze washer. So we've got Teflon sandwiched by bronze on both sides. So the bronze and Teflon stayed with us on this side. I'm going to go ahead and clean this up a bit. That's kind of an interesting setup there. And so we've got a total of 6 washers, four bronze and 2 Teflon. But everything looks good. You can see that the blade tang is quite well polished. So although the shape of it makes it for a little bit of a bumpy ride around the lock, it does operate smoothly, which is nice. And then we'll go ahead and push that out. Take the stop pin. Okay, here we go. Yeah, this part here has got quite a bit of weight to it. So this is where the weight of the knife is really coming from. This backspacer piece, as well as the lock bar itself. Yeah, it's almost 11 grams, that part. And then this backspacer with the spring, this is going to be kind of heavy as well. Yeah, 13 and a half. So we've got almost 25 grams. 25 grams or, oh, yeah, 8/10, almost 9/10 of an ounce there, just in these two parts with that one pin in there. But you can see the spring implementation, and so it's quite a strong back spring. It is a little bit rounded, but you can also see that little step there. So this is slightly thinner than the back spacer itself, so it can slide and move between the two scales. So nicely done, nice attention to detail. We're gonna go ahead and clean this up. All right. So now, go ahead and reassemble this guy. You know, over the years, Kaiser has done some really fantastic work on a lot of different levels, but it was kind of interesting to see their first backlock. You know, backlock knives are not something that most people are really all that excited about, but in my opinion, they make for really great, safe, you know, worker knives, and this is no different. This is definitely, you know, a great knife to carry and hand to anyone. You know, is a little bit on the larger side, but definitely, definitely a good piece that you can hand to anyone. All right. Let me grab a little slickum. So I'm using KPL Heavy on here, and this is what I use on most detents on, you know, like say flipper knives and that sort of stuff, but also when it comes to backlocks and slip joints, things like that. This stuff definitely stays in place really well, and yeah, definitely what works well in this application. Okay. And like a dumbass, I forgot to I should have put this on first, but that's okay. We're still going to get there. That blade stop pin is very, very small in diameter. Oop, good Lord. It's hard to get down in there. The thing is so tiny. All right. Okay. Now, let's, we'll relieve that. I'm putting my finger out on the pivot screw from the bottom, and then we'll set that blade down on there. Just like so. Now, a little more lube on there. Excellent. So this the Bowler N690 is something that we definitely are seeing a lot more often nowadays, and you know, I'm certainly in favor of that. If they're going to start using it in place of, you know, things like 8CR and D2 and whatnot, then that's just fantastic. Like I said, it's a steel that a lot of custom makers use because it is relatively easy to work with and polishes extremely well. And that, you know, a lot of times you're really going for the aesthetic value. So yeah, it's good steel. There we go. This thing snapped together. And that's those screws. Here we go. Okay. Make sure that that operates. All right, I'm gonna put a couple little drops of lube in here where the, you can see this or not, I'm putting a couple drops down in here where the backlock bar rides on that spring, just to make sure we don't have any friction right there. Get that worked in, and then we'll lube the blade tang from the top side of the knife. Put a little right there. Okay, now we're ready to go back together. Get the pivot screw. The Manly Peak has always been one of my kind of go-to knives for just a great solid worker knife, and this one definitely is going to get some pocket time around here for that that same duty. I said duty. Was that funny? My wife's sitting over here jacking around on her phone, so.
I actually almost said, he said duty.
Yeah, you could have. And I can tell that, or I hear that our air filter on the water heater is beeping.
Is that what that is?
Yes, that's what that beeping is. So that's fun. All right, so I was a little tight on the pivot. Definitely have no blade play here. It's perfectly centered. And we definitely have improved it. But let's get a little slickum on this blade tang here. So we're going to put just a couple little dabs right on the high spots on the blade tang. Yep. That'll do, donkey. Oh yeah. So I think this will break in quite nice, but man, is it good in hand. It really is fantastic. And in my opinion, for $75, I think this is a phenomenal buy. Just a fantastic, really good, durable work knife. Like I said, safe, back lock. You can hand it to anyone. Everyone understands how this lock works. Yeah, it's just a really, really good one. So there you go, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed that. The Kaiser Slicer. Go and check it out. It's an awesome knife. And, and here shortly when the higher end one comes out, depending on the price. I haven't seen a price on that one yet, but if it's coming in, maybe right at $100 or just under, I think that one will be a really, really nice pickup as well. So there you go. Have a good one. I'm gone.